Welcome to Travel in Style, a podcast created to inspire travel, have fun, and give you a unique perspective on how to do all of the above through the eyes and lens of travel expert and award-winning photographer and publisher, Jill Pater. Jill has worked in over 100 countries on assignment and has published 15 books on architecture, design, travel, and gastronomy. Today's show is brought to you by Calpak, a lifestyle luggage and travel accessory brand. To find out more on Calpak, you can visit calpaktravel.com, and to find out more on Jill, you can visit jillpater.com. Welcome back to Travel in Style. I am your host, Kevin, along with my colleague, Sam. How's it going, Sam?
It's going well, Kevin.
Good
Thank
to hear,
you.
Good to hear. Are you ready to take another trip around the globe?
Am I?
Aren't you?
That I am.
Great. Well, we are here as always with our travel expert, Jill Pater. Jill, how's it going?
It's going great, thanks.
Awesome. Today, you are going to take us to Tokyo, Japan.
Yes.
Tokyo sounds very exciting.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Definitely a place that I've wanted to go for quite some time, but I feel like it can be kind of tough. I don't know. It just seems like there's that perception that it's hard to get to because it's so far away. Was it tough to get to, Jill?
It's not tough to get to. In fact, it's very easy, especially from where we're based here in Los Angeles, from New York, from the Midwest. Direct flights, lots of direct flights from the U.S. to Tokyo. So that part is relatively easy, albeit they are longer flights. Tokyo is the food capital of the world. So that
I
is
did
like,
not know that.
yes. Tokyo is probably, in my opinion, the number one city in the world for food, and not just Japanese food, which obviously they have there in large supply, but for all foods. It has the most Michelin star restaurants in the world.
Yes, I was going to say, is it like quality of food or just selection of food?
Quality, selection, and, you know, in this case, Michelin star rating
I had no
food.
idea.
Yeah, same.
So some of the best Italian, French food, they even do
That's
American
wild.
food better than
In
we do it
Japan,
here.
Italian
Yeah.
food.
Yes.
I bet the
Yeah.
presentation is also very beautiful because the Japanese,
Very
they're so
detail-oriented.
detail-oriented, so creative as well. So makes it all the more appetizing.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so why Tokyo? Did you go for work, pleasure, fun?
As always, both.
Right,
Yes,
right.
yeah. Always,
I want your
always
job,
a mixture.
I feel like.
I know. I was a mixture of business and pleasure.
Right.
I think what attracted me most about Japan, obviously the food scene, which we knew about, but also the architecture. So modern architecture, Zen design is the mecca for that type of work.
Right. I feel like there's this part of Tokyo, Japan that I'm imagining that it's like the building upwards and then the Zen gardens and like the Zen
Right, because
part
it's
of
very
it,
modern,
right?
a lot of
Yeah.
like big city, metropolitan area feel.
Yeah.
But then it also has so much culture.
Right. It has a very traditional base. So you have that aspect to it as well, the historic traditional type of architecture, and then cutting edge modern. So it makes a really cool juxtaposition to photograph.
And that's what you mainly photographed while you were
Yes,
there.
mostly
Okay.
modern. Mhm.
Amazing.
Are you ever tempted to, if you go to shoot modern architecture in Japan, are you ever tempted to go kind of trying to, find the places that are a little off the beaten path, the more kind of
Traditional?
right, traditional architecture?
I definitely always visit those places because
Right.
I like architecture of all different genres. It's not just modern, but in terms of my work, it is pretty specific to modern.
Mhm.
I just finished a book called Modern Refuge, which does have a little more of that balance to it. So there are modern refuges around the world, mostly high-end hospitality, but they have kind of that mix going on where it's minimalist and has aspects of modern and traditional elements to it.
Right.
But mostly, I would say my mainstay is modern, shooting modern architecture.
So in addition to the culinary scene and to the architecture, are there any other things that really make Tokyo, a place to visit?
There's so many different things. So first of all, they have amazing markets. They're probably best known for the fish market, the Tsukiji fish market. Great museums, temples, shrines, art museums. You really have, like a lot of the bigger cities that we've talked about, you have so much to pick and choose from. So depending on your area of interest, you can really kind of cater around that, specific interest. It is a very large city. So I do recommend, again, we have to pick and choose
Sure.
if you're spending time there. And there's so many incredible neighborhoods, great, amazing shopping as well.
I know Sam's dying to know, what's the nightlife like?
How'd you know? That was my next thing.
Right.
Yes.
Got
The
you.
nightlife there is great.
Is
There's anything you want to do in Tokyo, you can do.
I feel like is it kind of like the city that never sleeps, kind of similar to like Vegas or something. I feel like I'm imagining lights always.
Times Square. Like, is there
on.
is there a comparison in the U.S. that Tokyo
Feels
kind
I
of
would
like
say
it?
probably New York is,
Yeah.
is the
Okay.
closest, just in terms of things always going on. And it does vary from neighborhood to neighborhood. So
Okay.
there are neighborhoods that are like more quiet and chilled, and then definitely the areas that are
Right.
kind of party, younger.
Poppin'.
Yeah.
the
That's-
poppin' neighborhoods.
That's
Yes.
definitely what
Yeah.
I
You're
was
looking for?
going for.
Yes. And
Well, where
Tokyo is
is it
very
popping?
safe. Yeah.
Popping off.
It's a very safe city, so
Yeah.
it is a fun place to go out in. It's a place you could easily, leave your hotel at
Right.
midnight and you feel comfortable coming and going at those hours too.
Because it is so dense,
Mhm.
is it easy to get around Tokyo?
It is. Their metro system is amazing, super clean. They have actually food within their metro station. They have restaurants and things, so super safe. And one thing that's interesting about Japan is you often see young kids traveling by themselves. So, like 7-year-old kids will take the metro and things by themselves.
7-year-old kids?
hmm
Wow.
Wait, hey,
That's,
Yeah.
I feel like you will not see that in, well, actually, you probably would see that in Manhattan. Like,
independence.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So how long would you recommend someone staying there?
So Tokyo and Japan in general, it's one of those places you could spend years and still not see everything.
Yeah, right.
But if you're going, I would say, again, because it's an longer international flight,
Right.
if you can spend at least 10 days
Okay,
there.
right.
I feel
yeah.
like
Go
so
around
so
seeing-
you we've traveled kind of around the world with you to a lot of different locations, and that sounds like kind of is there a number of days to really kind of soak in the environment, the culture, the architecture, the scenery?
like an average.
Yeah, like an
time?
average. Is it a week, 5 days, 10 days?
I would say the average minimum, and this is just minimum, would be 10 days
Yeah.
for those kind of flights. Any flight that's, over
long.
6 hours,
Yeah.
it takes you have the jet lag, you have a couple of days of just kind of getting
Adjusting,
acclimated.
right?
And
Yeah.
And two, you probably have some things planned that you want to do, but you want to allow space for new things you might not have thought of, or opportunities
Sure.
come up. You can take on those. But I would say minimum 10 days. Ideally longer in most of the places that we've been, but I think 10 days is a good standard as a minimum.
Yeah.
Right.
To fit everything in.
So I've heard so many amazing things about Japan, but something that I've heard in particular is cost wise. Is it expensive? Like, do you blow your wallet? How much do you, try to prepare a budget for yourself prior to going?
Sure. Well, Japan has, similar when we were talking about London, there are ways to definitely economize
Mhm.
things in Japan. So it is traditionally one of the most expensive cities in the world, but there are a lot of things you can do to kind of mitigate that. They have great public transportation within the city, so that definitely saves. Taxis in Japan tend to be very, very expensive. So even from the airport, you can take the train from the airport into the city. You can learn the metro, which is in English and Japanese, throughout pretty much all parts of the city. So that's a big saver there. Your biggest expense is probably going to be hotel, and that just requires taking some time and looking online and researching all your options. But there are deals to be had. And then food is a big one, right?
Right.
So restaurants will have the nice thing about walking around Tokyo is they'll have like these set lunch menus or set dinner menus, and they'll have little signs outside the restaurant that kind of say how it is, what the cost is for a set menu. And those tend to be very reasonable, like their business lunch, so to speak, or business dinners, for X amount. The one thing you do have to be careful about in Japanese restaurants is their menus tend to be quite robust. And so there'll be things that are very reasonable on the menu on up to like $1,000 items on
Oh,
their
wow.
sushi menu.
Oh,
So
great.
so something to watch.
Really
So
need to
like
know what you're
huge
getting
option,
into.
huge range. So don't just say like, just be a little cognizant of that.
yeah.
But it is absolutely easy there, and everything, because it's safe, because it's clean. They have these amazing little kind of like fast food places too that are very good. It is easy to budget there, I find.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just got to be smart.
Do you
It's-
find it? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's just that probably the hotel is
The most
one of the
expensive,
hardest.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you find it at all harder in Tokyo, or really, I don't know, maybe any Asian city, just with the language barrier? Does that make it any more difficult to communicate or to get around? When you go to a restaurant and you see the menu, I'm sure, understanding, prices and things like that. Like, is it harder?
In Tokyo, it's actually relatively easy because most things are written in Japanese in character and then in in
Okay.
English. So it is very kind of bilingual that way. And there are people, younger Japanese in particular, speak English.
Right.
It's quite common that they would speak English. So if you ask for help, people are very friendly. They're very open to helping you. And if they can't, there's usually somebody nearby that can. If you go outside of Tokyo, it's a bit tougher. If you're outside of the city, it is
Right.
definitely more Japanese.
Have
And
you
then
traveled outside of Tokyo
just
as well?
on the perimeter, so
Okay.
not as deep into the country as I would have liked yet. But I do know from good friends that live in those parts that it is quite difficult to get by.
You
in
Yeah.
probably
English.
need to
Yeah.
go with a guide.
A
or
guide.
somebody
Definitely
who's-
go with a
yeah.
guide or a translator.
Yeah,
Right.
or just have that, a little book,
Yeah,
little
right.
translate.
Hey, your Google
Just-
Right,
Translate.
Google
I'd
Translate.
Right.
out.
Did you have any favorite spots, whether it's restaurant, museums?
I do. I love the Tokyo Modern Art Museum. There was a cathedral there called St. Mary's Cathedral, which is absolutely stunning. It's by an architect, Kenzo Tanga, that I photographed. Just stunning.
I can't wait. I'm excited for
Oh,
this to see the
It'll be posted on our
photos.
blog too.
I know exactly.
And I think to your point, Sam, too, I mean, one of the best parts of just walking around Tokyo, walking around in the streets, is seeing like all the different elements of design. So not just the architecture, but you go to different, they have chocolate shops and little cake shops and tea cake shops, and everything is beautifully packaged
Yeah.
and designed. And there's so much care put into presentation and everything. So it's such a visual feast for the eyes.
Totally. I'm
it's a cool
obsessed
place.
with Japanese packaging, like Japanese design and packaging, and then all the streetwear brands are over
Right.
there. So I just imagine all these places that you can get lost. And that's kind of why I asked about the budget thing, because there's food that you definitely want to try. And then there's all the shopping. And I feel like everything is so cute. Like my brother brought me back really small, cute things.
A lot
Like
of cute things.
cute things. Like it was a Matchbox, but it was so cute. So what time of the year is the best time? I know during the springtime there's cherry blossoms.
Cherry blossom
and-
season, yeah, that's a
yeah.
very popular time to go. In summer, it can be quite hot, like the heart of summer. I was actually there in December, and it was beautiful that time
Okay.
of year.
Not
it was,
cold, or was it kind of cold?
I think it was unusually warm when I
Oh,
was
wow.
there. It was before. It was like towards the end of December. But I think it's a pretty, temperature wise, it's a pretty moderate place. Our spring, our fall. I would say you probably want, like in any major city, you kind of want to avoid the heat of summer just because it doesn't dissipate within the city. You don't get that cool breeze. So I think spring, fall, and even early winter there are the best times to visit.
So what brought you there initially to go visit? Was it you did have a job there, but did you also kind of like have it on your bucket list and you were waiting for this moment to happen?
I
for
was a
everything
bit,
to align?
it had been on the list for a long time, and I was planning this around the world trip. So I was planned a flight that literally went around the world from LA and around the globe. And so Tokyo was the obvious last stop for that. But
Okay.
it was exciting. It was definitely one of my favorite stops on the trip.
Amazing.
What time? So when you were actually there, were you shooting mostly architecture? Did you do any, culinary shooting?
I didn't do any culinary shooting. It was almost 100% focused on
Yeah.
architectural shoots.
That's always interesting to me. Like, I just feel like especially a city like Tokyo, right? There's just so much to take in. Do you ever, if you go there with the intent to shoot architecture, do you ever find yourself being like, oh my gosh, like I have to shoot this? Like you're at a Michelin restaurant, you have to shoot it. Or do you get inspiration from some of the things you see while you're there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a place, it's a great city to go back to, especially if you're traveling within Asia. It's an easy stop to add on to any other trip. And I think I'll definitely be going back there to shoot more culinary things. I mean, it's
Same, but we'll be on that same
yeah,
that same flight.
you
with
you guys will be
Sure.
coming
Yeah.
along because I
Okay.
didn't realize it. I mean, I knew it was. I knew it had that reputation for food, but it's hard to really imagine until you get there and see it. And
Yeah.
it's
I mean, I just, even just hearing you talk about it, right? Like I always, I think you think of, Europe, you think of Paris or of Italy, and like for being really great, culinary destinations.
Right,
I
right.
had no idea about Japan.
yeah. Number
I
one for
Crazy.
sure. And, Japanese food, the way we consume it here is a little bit different than the way they do there.
Sure.
They're so specialized in everything they do. Somebody who does sushi doesn't do
Is a
like
master.
ramen.
Yeah, I was
Is
just
a
gonna say, what is the
master.
sushi like there?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, everything's very separate though. So a chef that does sushi will only do sushi. Like they're a master at that. They've done it for 20 plus years, and that's all they do. Somebody that does like soba noodles only makes and cuts soba noodles, and so it's so masterful and beautiful.
Yes.
It's kind of at a different level. It takes on a whole new appreciation. We love Japanese food here in the U.S., but when you see it there and when you see it done at that level, it's
Is there a type of, and I could be making this up, but I feel like I've heard it. Is there a Japanese sushi chef or someone who trains for like years specifically to cut or to like do blowfish or some sort of poisonous
I
fish or
heard
something
that
like
too.
that?
Right.
Am I making that up?
you're probably not. I mean, they're
feel like-
very.
I
Like
heard
they
that.
everything-
train, it's like passed down through families and only like a few can like serve this poisonous fish.
Blowfish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, everything they do is so masterful
Right.
that it's and very, very specified in one thing. So that's
That's
entirely
so
possible.
crazy.
Yeah, no, I feel like I've watched a lot of videos of people from Japan that are masters in what they do.
Right.
Like I feel like I watched
It
a
might have been
man-
a Simpsons episode that I saw.
Right.
no,
Yeah.
no. Like I think I've watched like a bonsai tree
Oh, right.
master and like
Very
somebody
particular
who makes
set of
swords, like
skills.
traditional swords. Yeah,
Right.
like very disciplined and very like artistic, creative, but devoted to their
Yes.
craft.
And perfectionist. too.
Perfectionist,
So we'll
yeah.
add these to the Destination Cal Pack. We'll find your blowfish man.
That's-
Count
I
it in.
swear.
Yeah.
So I'm not making that up. I really
Well,
feel like I'm not.
I heard that too.
But do
Okay.
you get to see a lot of that? Because I know like Tokyo is a very metropolitan city, right? Or does it just seem like, you see the businessmen, the businesswomen, or is it, you see a lot of that, old school culture?
You do. I mean, Tokyo is such a dense city and there's so much diversity within it that it kind of depends where you are. So when you're in the business district, I mean, you see lots of, corporate people going to work, but there's so many just like nooks and crannies within the city that if that's on your itinerary to see, you can absolutely see
Sure.
the traditional parts. Yeah.
Were there any crazy surprises? Because I feel like I could go to a restaurant and see some really weird stuff on menus. So were there any crazy surprises, whether it was through food, through your travels, anything that just really was like, whoa?
I think on this particular one, going to the fish market, which you go at like 4 or 5 in the morning, and it's their tuna trade is one of the biggest in
Yeah.
the world, one of the big kind of showstoppers. But just going through the fish market, you see like live snakes and just all these
Oh,
very
Oh.
interesting.
Awesome.
I didn't know she was going to say
Oh.
snakes.
Interesting.
Live snakes.
Marine life for sale,
Mhm.
and it's crazy seeing it. It's so raw. It's like there's a grit to it, grittiness to it. And just, this is the kind of what's fueling a lot of the food and the restaurants that you see. So being kind of at that heart of that trade,
Mhm.
it's interesting to see and experience.
So did
It's not
you
farm.
travel solo on this trip?
I did.
Okay,
Mhm.
and so how much did you plan ahead? Because I wonder, was that fish market trip a part of your plan initially?
It definitely was.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So I kind of lay out all the, I have an idea of what I want to see and do, and I don't like book it in by any means, but I just, as once I get there and kind of get settled, decide what I want to do each day, knowing kind of what the different options are.
Okay.
Is it a place you'd go back? Tokyo?
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. It's similar to, New York or London, which we've visited on this podcast. It's a place you could go back 100 times and you'd have a different experience every single
Sure.
time.
Okay, and you still have the other, surrounding cities to kind of venture off to
Absolutely.
too, right? In Japan.
Yes. Once you're in the region, you're golden.
And those, like the other cities are easy to get to as well?
There are high-speed trains
Sure.
to get to them. It's just a little bit different than traveling within Tokyo, again, because of the English factor. You're not going to be able to get by on just English, but amazing. I mean, so many things to see in that country. I have friends that have lived there for years, and they're still scratching the surface.
Yeah.
Oh wow, right.
I wish the U.S. had like a tube where you could go from L.A. to New York in like 2 hours or something.
Yeah, there's for
It's
sure.
so
You just go
difficult,
underground
right?
and then you just end up in New York.
Right.
But I feel like you can do that in cities in Asia and in Europe. It's so easy to get around to different countries, different
Yes, definitely.
just different places, like more convenient and quicker.
Yeah, especially high-speed train and
Yeah.
transport. Like
Yeah.
Japan has some of the top-end trains in the world,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's a nice definitely a nice factor to not always have to travel by air as well.
For sure.
Exactly. So I know you said you traveled in December to Tokyo. I know you also have great packing hacks. So it's time for
It's that
Jill's.
time again? It's that time.
It's that time for
Packing hack
Jill's
time.
packing hack. And this time it has to do with the idea of being prepared. So how do you get prepared for a trip?
So I think one of the easiest ways to pack is to start with just a master list for that trip. So I'll start a couple weeks before I go and just, as I think of things, just take notes. So when I actually go to pack, I have a list I'm working from. That way you don't forget important things like umbrellas, hats, medications, things like that. And so I have a couple lists that I use for different locations and then just add and subtract to them accordingly. But I highly recommend using a list. It'll help you not leave anything behind that might be hard to get in that particular location.
Is this a written list, or are you a phone type of person? Is there an app you use?
I sometimes do it on my phone. I sometimes do it on my computer. So I'll just
Okay.
have like a list and print it out and then cross it off. Because there's certain things too when you're packing, especially if you're packing at the last minute, certain things that you add to your bag, right before you leave the house. So I just kind of keep the list and then cross things off as I start actually packing the bags.
Smart.
Yep.
Well, Jill, as always, I am extremely jealous and envious of your life. But thank you again for taking us through Tokyo. It was great to have you.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
As always, join us again in 2 weeks for our next episode of Travel in Style. You can learn more about Jill Pater on jillpater.com, and to read more about each destination, please visit Calpac's blog, destinationcalpac.com, for Jill's tips and amazing photography. Find more about our podcast, Travel in Style, on iTunes, YouTube, and SoundCloud. If you enjoyed this show, please subscribe, rate, and send us a nice review. Happy travels!